Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Our next guest says that the ideas we have about ourselves and the world could manifest as self-sabotage. Here to explain, we welcome back recovery expert and author of Conscious Creation, 5 Steps to Embracing the Life of Your Dreams, TJ Woodward. It's so nice to see you.
So great to be with you again, and I'm looking forward to another great conversation with you.
Me too. So let's talk about these core false beliefs that we might be walking around with and not really realize it.
Yeah, a lot of times we want to change things in our lives, change a relationship. Maybe it's a New Year's resolution. We want to eat more healthy. We want to work out more. And all of that can be really important. But if we haven't addressed what's in the unconscious or the subconscious, what I call core false beliefs, we actually can't really change anything, not in any sustainable way.
Is that some of that negative self-talk that some of us are guilty of? I know I'm really hard on myself internally, much more so than I am to people that are in my life that I love.
You know, it's such an interesting point you bring up. If I realize the way I talk to myself and then ask myself, would I ever talk to a friend that way, or would I even allow someone to talk to me that way? That's an indicator of how that self-perception is. So it is negative self-talk, but it's also something much deeper. Sometimes we're not even aware we have these core false beliefs that are actually running the show.
And that could be something that really stems from childhood experiences or trauma from the past that we're not really connecting the dots to today.
About 100% of the time it is. We come into the world, in my experience, as a whole imperfect being, or if that doesn't work for someone, we at least come in as a blank canvas, and then we absorb the things that are happening around us. Then we decide things about ourselves at such a young age when we don't even have the cognitive ability to understand what we're deciding. So these things get, my favorite word, concretized in our unconscious, and they end up running the show.
Right, so when you're kind of running with those core false beliefs, it can really have some real world impacts on what your life looks like.
That's right. And the way we actually can start to heal these is to look at when we decided these and to start to reframe them, not from just the point of today. In other words, it's not just I'm going to change my narrative or learn how to have more positive thoughts. It's actually going back and remembering when we started to absorb and decide these, and we start to have a different relationship with ourselves. We actually, in that way, can almost change the past in some ways.
Well, and having like an open mind and a curious spirit in terms of exploring these things and just going, hey, I'm going to see what I see, and that's okay. And I might find things that are kind of tough to examine, but I'm going to walk through it.
Yeah, and that's why the phrase ignorance is bliss, that's how that comes to mind for me. But the truth is, if we're not aware of these core false beliefs, as I've said, they're running the show. And I love what you said, because when I'm curious about it, I start to open up to different possibilities. I can start to question those thoughts. I can start to look at their origin. I can start to ask myself questions like, what would I feel like and what would it be like if I had a different idea about myself? Just that question alone can start to loosen the grip that they have on us.
What about forgiveness? Do we need to find some grace for ourselves and maybe the people around us who have, you know, either purposely or inadvertently maybe contributed to some of that trauma that we're dealing with?
Without a doubt, forgiveness is such a big key. And sometimes the word forgiveness can be really loaded or weighted. So sometimes I will ask someone, if you're not ready to forgive, can you reframe that and say, can I make peace with the past regardless of what's happened? And that question can start to move us toward forgiveness, even if we aren't 100% ready to at this moment.
Because that's where you really find the freedom, right? When you're not holding on to all those resentments, you know, years and decades later. It can be so detrimental to have that negative feeling all the time.
It is, and it's a very nuanced conversation, because sometimes we want to pretend like it didn't hurt, or pretend like we might say things like they did the best they could, or I did the best they could. That might be a bypass. So we want to say, yes, it is true. You know, my parents did do the best they could, and it still had this impact on me. So I still can go back and do the healing, but not go into blame, because blame can actually keep us stuck.
I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure. So what about replacing those core false beliefs with some new, more positive truths to bring into our life?
Yeah, as I said, we can start to reframe those. We can start to question them. We can start to say things like, can I find an example or two of times when I didn't believe that or didn't experience it? But then, as I said, the deeper work is to ask the question, where did this core false belief originate? How old was I? What was happening in my environment? What did I absorb or decide with very limited information? How do I start to care for myself, my adult self, care for my younger self, start to allow myself to feel that which wasn't felt before, and then we can start to have a very different relationship with these beliefs.
It's not easy, but we can all start somewhere, and you gave us some really good advice today. So thank you so much, TJ. It was so nice to see you.
Thank you. Always great seeing you as well.
TJ's book again is Conscious Creation. We'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.